That's so interesting. It's also funny in Texas working with builders, there's no like licensing or certifications required to be a home builder in the state of Texas. So it's a little silly that it requires more education and certifications to list a home than it does to build a home.
Than it does to build it. Yeah, that's actually kind of scary. Welcome to another episode of the In Your Home podcast. I don't. This is
I market. Tony B is happy to.
Would have to be Barclay Prime.
so how many games do you
Grew up in Monmouth County, Central Jersey, my whole life.
Now in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis.
But I love being an artist, man, because I want to make stories. And
I'm based here in Philly for about 30 plus years now.
The commercial market is in good shape.
No, I need to be in control of everything. I'm a control freak.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the In Your Home podcast. Once again, we have a guest from outside of the Philadelphia area, but who's in the same industry I'm in, and I was excited to speak to her, and I'm going to let her introduce herself now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Madelyn Kilkenny. I am the founder of Madhaus Co, an interior design business located in Houston, Texas.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so no problem. I actually was excited to have you on because you seem to do the part of the business of real estate that I'm bad at, which is the style and the interior design. And I do everything else good, but like that's the part where I'm like, I'd rather find someone to help me with it. So
Yeah.
it was a perfect transition. So you were a realtor, or you still are? Or?
Yeah, so I just recently made my license inactive, but that's how I got started in the industry. When I was in college, I actually got my real estate license and started commuting back and forth between A&M and Houston up in College Station. So got started with a boutique brokerage in a nice part of town in Houston and thought, if I could get a couple clients under my belt before I graduated school, that would give me a head start in doing that full time. So had my real estate license for about 5 years, used it mainly for the first 2 years, and then kind of parlayed that experience working with builders specifically for new construction, speculative listings to work my way into how they do their operations for selecting finishes for their construction.
How far is A&M from Houston?
It's about 2 hours, 2.5 hours
Okay.
if there's traffic, just depends.
Yeah. And is the process to become a real estate agent in Texas difficult, or is it?
Super straightforward, super simple. If you can fog a mirror, you can get a real estate license in Texas. So it's one of those things. I did a couple online classes pretty quick one summer and then had my license and was ready to go.
Yeah. So people like talk about how easy it is to get a license in the United States, but I've been to other countries recently and you don't even need, like, you just can like go there one day and say, I'm a realtor, and you're a realtor.
That's so interesting. It's also funny in Texas working with builders, there's no like licensing or certifications required to be a home builder in the state of Texas. So it's a little silly that it requires more education and certifications to list a home than it does to build a home.
Than it does to build it. Yeah, that's actually kind of scary. So are you hired for what you do by like builders or by clients or both?
Yeah, both. Mainly by builders. I like to have my business structured more B2B just because I think it's a little bit easier that way. But I do work with several homeowners who are remodeling, or I'll work with contractors that are doing remodeling jobs, or just homeowners directly that are wanting to redecorate or, do smaller projects. But most of my business comes from working directly with builders who kind of have me built into their process. So when they have a new client that comes on board for custom building, or if they're building a new spec home, then they introduce me to those clients as soon as they sign a contract with them and we get started on the design work together. So it's kind of a nice setup because I don't really do much lead generation outside of just, word of mouth advertising and referrals and that kind of thing. But that comes with its pros and cons as well. As soon as I have a new client that signs on with a builder, they turn them over to me, and there's a little bit of, okay, well then what are you wanting to build? What kind of style are you looking for? So I'm not necessarily weeding out all of the clients that I'm working with, but it does give me a lot of experience of doing different types of projects that I, wouldn't have access to otherwise. So I really enjoy the setup.
Yeah. So how long did it take, like, of you doing that before you decided, like, this is going to be my full-time thing?
It took a couple years for me to work into that full time, mainly because I studied business in college. I did not do any sort of interior design track or architecture, anything like that. So when I first got started doing some of the selections, it was more so from a realtor's point of view of just, hey, here's these clients that came into this house that like the house that I was running an open house in, for example, but wanted to make some tweaks, like they'd prefer a white kitchen, or these are the types of finishes that they'd like. So I put together little presentations with the clients of what they were wanting and then presented that to the builder. So then I actually had one builder that said, you know, this is actually really helpful if you could put together like their preferences, their wants, their tastes, the style that they're wanting. If you could make that just a little bit more detailed, then we could use that as more of a guide when we're actually doing the selections for their project. So gave me a little bit of a light bulb moment of, okay, this could be a little niche for me to start doing selections rather than doing like full scale interior design where I'm coming up with plans in the first place or modifying floor plans. Instead, I'm just taking the architectural plans as they exist, making a couple notes on them, but mainly just picking out the actual finishes of here's the colors, this is the tile, this is the kind of lighting that they like. So did that free at first a little bit, kind of just worked into my real estate commission. I didn't charge anything outside of that for the design work for probably the first year or so. Then I started charging a little bit for it, and then I dove into my own business full-time about 2 years later. So I've been doing that now for 5 years full-time.
So the stuff that you put into these homes, is it like from local companies or is it like all over the place?
Totally
Or
depends.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can get online now, especially through like online realtors. Oh my God, online resources like build.com, things like that, where you can get plumbing and electrical. So depending on what the client is wanting, then we'll source things from all over. Sometimes we'll import things as well. We have a really awesome antique show here in Texas in Round Top that people come from all over the country and sometimes all over the world. So we have importers from Italy and France, and just depending on the types of things that you're looking for, sometimes we'll get stuff that way. But most of the time, I'm sourcing a good chunk of things online, and then the larger items like countertop slabs, for example, where you really need to get that somewhere local, then we'll do a mixture.
Okay. Yeah, it reminds me of I had a listing, or actually, I never even got the listing. I didn't want it, but I went to get a listing, and it was in like an area of Philadelphia that was not a highly desirable area where home values just were not that high.
Mhm.
But the person that built the house, he didn't build it. It was already built, but he like renovated the entire thing. And he was like, his like, he's been doing it for years, and he would get like the finest, like Italian stone and French this and that. And he made this house in the worst part of Philadelphia look to be like this, like really, really,
Nice.
really nice, but it was
Oh, yeah.
never gonna sell. He's like, this is the fireplace was made of like this marble that was like
Yeah.
crazy amount of money. And then he's like, sell this house for $850,000 in a neighborhood that, like, if you get 250, you're lucky. And he just
Yeah.
couldn't. I was like, you did a great job, but like, it's not going to sell. It's just not going to, and it didn't. But yeah.
That's tough. And sometimes I'll get some interesting requests of things that I've never had to source before. For example, I have a house that we have a pool that's on the second story, kind of built into their patio. It's a really cool custom build project that I'm working on, but they wanted a window in the pool that shows through to like their basement space. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me find an aquarium grade window that's strong enough to put in a pool. Let me do some Googling. So I like to say sometimes my job is, you know, very much creative and on the artistic side of things. And sometimes I'm just literally a professional Googler, just trying to locate how to get things.
Did you find it?
Yeah, it's solid. I'll send you some pictures of it. It turned out really cool.
Yeah, that's great. So is like where you live, is there a lot of new builds, or is it like, yeah,
definitely. In Houston in general, a lot of the nicer neighborhoods in Houston were developed in the 50s. So there's quite a bit of teardowns that are happening right now in the more affluent parts of town. So places like Memorial, River Oaks, Spring Branch, if anybody's familiar with those parts of town. So there is a lot of, you know, smaller one-story ranch-style homes that are being torn down for large, you know, little mini McMansions, if you want to call them that. Definitely coming in with a lot of new construction these days. And, you know, we have a lot of things that wind up getting damaged or flooded from hurricanes. So there was a large wave of new construction after Hurricane Harvey happened several years ago, where a lot of homes, you know, there was so much remediation and work that needed to be done where it just made more sense to tear it down and put something new, build it up as well so that it doesn't flood again.
Yeah. What What would you say is like the average cost of an average house in Houston?
Depends on the type of home that you're going for. I would say generally cost of living here in Texas is pretty low compared to other parts of the country. So I would say if you want, a decent like 2,500 square foot home that's pretty nice, you could find something certainly from like 350 to 500. Depending on the neighborhood that you want to be in or how close to town you want to be, because Houston is ginormous. So if you're willing to make a little bit of a commute or want to live on the outskirts of town, you can certainly find things under the 250 mark. So there's definitely affordable options out there. I would say generally the price of new construction is more so around like the $500 to $750 a square foot mark. For
Okay.
building, things can be a little bit more expensive, but that's just price of materials. Getting lumber and steel and all the things is just expensive these days. So I would say most of the homes that I'm working on from a design point of view, the builders that I'm working with, they're not doing projects that are under $1 million because it's just not as profitable.
Okay. Got it. And do you own a home or do you rent a home?
I do. Yeah, I own a home. We own a home up in the Conroe area. We're actually in the process of listing our home soon and moving to a different part of the state because my husband recently got a new job out in the hill country. We also had major hurricane damage here when Hurricane Beryl came through this past July, where we had a huge pine tree that went straight through our roof. So I have a little bit of PTSD now because we live in this gorgeous neighborhood with super tall trees, and every time there's a gust of wind, I'm like, please, not again. And we had
Right.
insurance and all of that. So luckily we'll be moving out to the hill country where the trees are a lot shorter.
Okay. How far is how far away is it from?
Like 4.5 hours.
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Okay. So when you say you're listing it, are you gonna are you listing it by yourself or?
No, so when we bought the house, I represented us as our buying agent and I sold our previous home as well. But this time around, I want to make it as simple as possible. So I'll definitely be
You'll find
referring
someone.
my friends. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, plenty of friends in the industry still. So I'll have a trusted friend list it for us and then just focus on the whole moving part of it. Cause we moved into this house almost exactly a year ago. So it'll be a little bit of a headache to move everything back up. But luckily I have some stuff in boxes still that I just never unpacked that we can take with us and make it a little bit easier.
Is the cost where you're moving to more expensive or less expensive?
Yes, surprisingly. So, my husband is an assistant superintendent for a private luxury golf course out there. It's a
Okay.
nice course where there's a bunch of musicians and former professional athletes and all sorts of people living out there. So, it's a super small town, but surprisingly wealthy area where things just happen to be pretty expensive. So, for now, I think we're going to get an apartment and rent and see what's out there until we have a better idea of exactly where we want to end up. But hopefully we'll be buying something out there within the next couple of years, and hopefully interest rates go down in the meantime. So
That
that
would
might
be
be
good.
nice to wait.
Might be smart. Yeah. Okay. So you're always from Texas, basically.
Yes, born and
Born and
raised in
raised.
Houston, went to college in Texas. Yeah, Texas through and through.
What's the weather like there today?
It's actually kind of chilly today. It's been up in the 80s for the last couple of weeks, and it's been like good tanning weather. My seasonal depression is gone, so it's been nice to have things warm up a little bit more, but we had a little bit of a cold front come through, so I think it's in the 40s this morning, but it's supposed to be back up to 80 tomorrow, so can't complain.
Yeah, so is 40s like typically the coldest it gets, or
Yeah, we did have a couple freezes this year where it got down
yeah,
into the 20s, but I think everybody has kind of experienced crazy weather this year. So that's not super typical for us. Typically, wintertime we'll get like a freeze where it will dip below 30 or 32, and everybody's freaking out that our pipes are going to burst. And, we had kind of a snowmageddon situation a few years ago where things got cold for several days in a row, and then everybody's houses just fell apart because we just do not build
you
things
don't
here
build.
for. Yeah, so this year we had a couple freezes. It was a little bit colder than usual, but kind of a nice reprieve because I'm sure as soon as summer comes along, it'll be 100
Uh,
degrees, weeks on
yeah,
it. We have super high humidity. I like to joke with people who we're friends with that live in other parts of the country that when you come to Texas, especially in the summer and down here in Houston, you just have to be prepared to sweat and embrace it because there's no avoiding it.
yeah, yeah. I wish it was. So I like the last couple winters here until this winter wasn't that bad. So yeah, I was like fine with it, and then this winter hit, and it actually was weird because the summer was really hot, hotter than
Mhm.
I remember in a while. But the winter, this winter, it was just brutal, and it like didn't stop, and the seasonal depression, which I never really had, started this year. So
Oh
I
yeah.
like I had to escape. I escaped 2 times during the winter to warmth, and yeah, it was bad. It was a bad winter.
So does it snow a lot there as well?
Like it's different every year. It actually didn't really snow that much, like
Mhm.
significant. Like we had a couple little snows, but they weren't like big ones. But it was just the temperature I felt like was colder and the wind, and it was just like worse than it. And and maybe the last, it was probably a tease because like the last couple winters just were not that bad.
So you're just not mentally prepared.
Yeah, I was like thinking it was global warming and we're never gonna get that weather
Oh yeah.
again, and it came back.
No,
Yeah.
it's crazy how many times we've had like once in a lifetime kind of weather events that keep happening, especially here. It's like we had Hurricane Harvey, and oh, we're never going to see a flood like that again, and then it's flooded that way
And
like
then it
twice.
happens. Yeah.
Like, okay. But yeah, I think down here, especially with it freezing a couple times this year, people were kind of caught off guard, but we just like don't own winter coats. Like it's just not something that we typically need. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm staying inside and working from home while it's still chilly outside because I literally don't have the wardrobe for going out into that weather.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, it varies too. Like there'll be days where it's just brutally cold, and then like the next day it's not that bad, and it's like, so you have like different winter clothing outfits
Yeah.
to fit what you. And then like yesterday or 2 days ago here it was like in the upper 60s, but then
Nice.
today it's freezing again. So
Oh,
you never know. But I think we're like probably like a month away from significantly better weather here.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I was just in, which I didn't even know this was possible, but I went on vacation to Colombia.
Ooh.
Yeah, and the first day I got there, it appeared like cloudy, and I lay at the pool for an hour, and I don't like burn that easy, and in 1 hour I was like burnt. And then I look on my phone, I'm at the weather, and it says like the UV index is 15 out of 10, which I didn't even know it was yeah, like.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then people were telling me like we're pretty close to the equator. That's probably why. Like,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I've never seen that before. Like in the United States, nowhere it was over 10.
Yeah, no, I've never seen that either. That's crazy. Yeah, I've seen it get up to 10, but cloud burn is a real thing that you gotta.
Yeah, I mean the sun like popped out a little, but it just didn't feel. But yeah, it was bad. So the design you have behind you, was that sourced by you?
Yes, yeah, I found that at that antique show in Round Top. Highly recommend for people who are wanting to go find cool stuff. This was handmade by somebody here in Texas that they were kind of mimicking a more Japanese style design, but thought that it was super cool. It's actually very inexpensive. I think that was like $200.
Really? It's nice. It's
Thank
nice.
you.
Does anyone find you like, so you said like most of your business now is just like word of mouth. Does anyone find you like on social media or your website or yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I do have people reach out from a bunch of different mediums. And then sometimes I have real estate friends as well that are working with people who are wanting to potentially remodel a house that they're buying or wanting to see what they can do to their home before they list it. So I have a bunch of different sources on how people get in touch with me, but it is interesting. I try to put content of the houses that I'm working with on online, and I get some various responses on Instagram and TikTok, and it's funny how different things get received on different platforms as well, of like things on Instagram because my demographic is much more local and it's people who are in this area and see how we build things here in Texas. It seems to, go over a little bit better. And then sometimes you get things on the algorithm on TikTok and people are like, this is insane. What do you mean you're building a 17,000 square foot for someone? I'm like, it's Texas, things are bigger.
Yeah, I'm on TikTok too, and you never know what you're gonna get.
Oh yeah.
I'm like immune to it now, but it can be funny. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
Also funny,
there's
also it's like decor finds or things that I'll find like for sale around me of, oh, I'm at this antique shop, here's this thing that's super affordable, and then I'll get comments and people are like, what? This is not affordable. What are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, not for you, but I don't mean that in a rude way, but it's like, it's super interesting that you try to throw deals and stuff out there. It's like, well, if you're looking for a French antique, this is a good price. So kind of funny how things get received sometimes.
yeah, I've posted houses that like even some that aren't even that expensive, and like it must be nice to live there. How do you like, like people just complaining about, I'm like, what can you do?
Yeah. Gotta love the internet.
Or they'll just post like things like who wants to live there? Who would ever want to live there? Who would ever like
Yeah, it's like, okay, you're not the target
sometimes I'll
demographic.
write back, so where do you live? And then they don't respond.
Yeah. I've had people literally all post a house that's a custom build where obviously everything we picked out was what that client wanted. And I'll have comments that are like, I don't like it. I'm like, okay, perfect. You don't have
It's
to
not
live
for
there.
you.
Yeah.
Right. So you've been in Texas all your life. If you could like pack up and move someday, where would it be if you could pick anywhere?
I'd have to say somewhere beachy for sure. Either that or Scottsdale, Arizona, just because I've spent a lot of time in Scottsdale. My husband played professional baseball, so we'd go there for spring training every year. And for some reason, it feels like similar culture wise to Houston in a weird way, where I just like the people there and I like the outdoor activities and that kind of thing of being able to hike and do different things. I'm used to the heat too, because being in Houston, we have
Mm,
it pretty. So Arizona is not too different in that sense. But if I could go somewhere beachy, like if we're talking hypothetical dream life, I'd be on a beach in Hawaii, just hanging out, enjoying leisure.
how far is the closest beach from where you live?
It's actually not too far, but it's
Really?
Galveston, so I don't know if you can qualify it as a beach. It is
Okay.
a beach, but like the sand is gross, the water is brown,
Brown.
like it's not a beautiful tropical destination that you would imagine.
Yeah. Okay. It's like drivable?
Yeah. It's like a couple hours from where I live currently, and growing up I was about 45 minutes away from it. So that's where we would go. Like in high school, people would get beach houses for prom weekend and we'd all
Hmm.
go down there. And yeah, so it was a big part of growing up in this area, but definitely not the type of water that you want to actually get out in and swim.
What would be like the closest good beach from where you are?
I'd say
Like,
probably South Padre.
okay,
That's several hours worth of drive.
yeah. Okay. That was like a huge spring break place at one point. I don't know if it still
Yeah,
is, but yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So what's like your future plans? Like, do you have like any big dreams with this business or something else?
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of like how I transitioned into the design world in itself, it's something that I was always interested in, but wasn't sure exactly how I was going to make it happen. And then one way or another, I had kind of opportunities arise. So I'm definitely someone who's willing to adapt and kind of take opportunity as it comes. So I actually recently joined a team of one of the builders that I've been working with for the last several years, but they build out of concrete. They use skip panels, which are structural concrete insulated panels, where it's
Okay.
basically like insulated foam core with galvanized steel mesh on the outside where they spray it with concrete. So it's a really cool way to make a super strong, energy efficient home that's resilient to high winds and flooding and earthquakes and fires. So I actually just joined their team full time as well. So I'll still be running my design business and I'll have, help with running the projects that I've already committed to for the next couple years, and we'll continue doing that as well. But I'm really excited to be joining their team to start working on some projects nationwide, especially with wildfires happening in California and a lot of the natural disasters that it seems to be happening much more frequently throughout the country. It's one of those things, like I said, in Texas, you don't have to technically be licensed to build a house here. So I've definitely seen some houses where, it's not something that I'm super thrilled about, that people are buying those houses and living in those houses. I think you kind of get away with a lot when it comes to how things are built these days. And I know you hear things like, oh, they don't build things how they
What they
used to.
used to, right?
Just strong. And I think with the natural disasters we've been experiencing, especially recently, to have that peace of mind of living in a place that you know is not going to blow over or flood or get burned down in a fire, I think that that's just a better way of doing things. So
Hmm.
I'm really excited that there is new innovation out there that we can build better. So I'm excited to kind of jump into that and be part of building new things that hopefully will last for multiple generations.
So it's like rare. What they do is rare.
Yeah, it's super
Yeah.
unique. There are a bunch of different forms of concrete construction, which I could totally geek out on this. So you might have to rein me in a little bit on talking about it too much. But you have like cast in place concrete, but that's obviously super heavy and requires a lot of material because you're basically making forms and then filling the forms full of concrete, like solid concrete. So it takes a ton of material and it's really expensive. So you can do that, but the cost effectiveness of that is pretty low. They also have 3D printing where you can basically make a house out of it, but then it doesn't have any sort of structural rebar or anything in it. So when it comes to earthquake resistance or high wind resistance here in Texas, if we have a hurricane blow through, that's blowing over.
Hmm.
There are a few different ways of building with concrete, but this is a really unique way of doing it. And they also have the sole production and distribution rights to a product called UHPC, which is ultra high performance concrete, which is actually invented by the Romans. That's what the Pantheon was built out of. So
Okay.
using like ash from volcanic eruptions back in the day. They reinvented it, and then he's using silica. So they have a proprietary concrete that they basically can put on the outside of a house to make it incredibly fire resistant, like up to 2200 degrees Fahrenheit. So it gives you like a little protective coating on the outside of your house. And it's neat because it has so much silica in it. When it rains, if there's any sort of cracks or anything in the concrete, it's actually self-healing. The rain will cause a chemical reaction within the product itself, so it smooths back over. So instead of working with like a stucco product or something that obviously over time is going to crack, that you come back and caulk as many times as you can and repaint to try to make it pretty over time, it actually will smooth itself out. So it's nice because we can mix it with different pigments and use it like stucco or like paint, like a finishing layer on the outside of the house, but it's so much more durable. So I'm really excited to be able to dive into some of those
New
applications.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, what we can do with it.
And so they do this like nationwide, or it's just Texas?
Yeah, nationwide. They're headquartered here in Houston, obviously, because we're such a hub for natural disasters here. We have a hurricane like left and right constantly, but we're building in California, especially in the LA area. Recently, we just opened an LA office out there, Palm Springs, Miami, some places in Florida as well. So we're in the process of expanding. That's part of why I'm glad to be joining the team now, so that we can make this more accessible nationwide. Because obviously, you know, the people who are doing it now are more so like the first movers for this type of concept. So I'm hoping that as we do expand, we can scale things a little bit better and make it more affordable for the average person.
So will you have to like travel to these other areas, or is it?
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm excited for that.
No, that's good. I would like that. Yeah. Okay. So when does that start, or did it start?
Yeah, so I'm officially doing that now. I'm kind of in both worlds as far as working on their team and then also doing my own projects and things that I have going on outside of it, which is really awesome that they're super nice in the sense that when he asked me if I would join the team, I told him, well, you know, I'm working in new construction. Some of these projects that I've committed to, like we're just now in the permitting stage, so it's going to take another 18 to 24 months on, you know, at least of these. Yeah, totally. So he's like, that's okay. Continue your brand, continue doing what you need to do, hire on help if you need to for doing the rest of those projects. And so I've been doing both now for about a couple months. It's still fairly new, but we're working on expanding and doing some new projects here in Texas and California. So hopefully I'll be flying out to LA soon and working on some projects out there, which will be super neat to be part of that market.
Do you know, like, what happened in LA recently? Is that like, are people building like crazy, or are they like scaling back? Or
well, things are pretty slow at the moment just because there are so many question marks on how to handle things, especially from the decontamination standpoint, because obviously with California there's so many environmental restrictions on what do you do with all the decontaminated materials, and the temperatures for those fires there were so hot that it literally melted sewer lines. So there's a lot of kind of yucky things that you don't necessarily imagine of, like, obviously there's houses that burn down, the things that are left over, but just like what do you do with the utilities and the things that are left there, and setting up new tie-ins for those utilities as well. So I think there's big conversations on if you're going to rerun electrical to all these areas, do you go ahead and bury it? And then there's access issues for being able to do that with so much debris and everything still there. So it's kind of a process. I'm hoping that they're able to kind of work through the details on some of that soon. And I know they've made promises of expediting the permitting process and making it where things are a little bit easier, but you do have to get a permit for cleaning up and then a permit for building. So it'll be a long process, I'm sure. And a lot of people are interested in learning more about that, or at least clearing the lot and doing the decontamination now so that they can make an informed decision on whether or not they want to build or just sell it once it's cleaned up. So I think I've seen the real estate reports. There are a ton of new listings that people are throwing stuff up on the market. I think the last month they've had like a record amount of listings go up.
Wow. I've gotten a couple people since that happened that are like, I'm done with California, and they're moving back to like this area.
Yeah, fair. I think probably a lot of people will be headed to Austin as well. That seems to be a popular move from California here in Texas.
And how far is that from where you are? Austin?
Only a couple hours. Yeah, it's not too
I haven't been there, but I keep hearing go there.
Oh yeah, you should check it out. It's gorgeous. It's really fun.
Yeah. What else? Do you have any personal plans upcoming?
Our move out to Bernie is a big one. I'm excited for that. But beyond that, no, just kind of diving into work. I'm in the era of my life where I'm really putting my head down in my 20s and trying to make things happen. I'm empire building, if you will. I'm on my mission for world domination in the design world. So that's what's on my to-do list. So kind of a big one, but trying to chip away daily.
So you're renting where you're moving. What's like the average rent in that particular area?
It's crazy to find like just a typical house to be able to rent. You're looking at over $3,000 a month. I think we're probably just going to move into an apartment so that we can get all the amenities and the gym and the
Yeah.
pool and all, just to make it a little bit easier. And like I said, with the whole hurricane situation here, where we were dealing with hurricane damage it took a very long time to get through insurance and get our roof replaced and get the roof rebuilt and reframed and all of that. So if somebody's saying zero maintenance, then it's my arm, sign me up for it.
It's
I'm ready for
nice.
that. It will be
Yeah.
a nice reprieve. So some of the apartments we've been looking at for like a 1 or 2 bedroom are around $2,500. So
Okay.
not the worst, but in Texas, that's pretty expensive.
That is expensive. That's like probably similar to here. Well,
Okay.
for a one bedroom is like anywhere from 2 to 2,500, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah. In like a building with nice amenities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is much easier. You don't have to.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. It will be kind of weird going from being a homeowner because this is our second home. I had like an investment property, my first home that I did a bunch of DIY work in, of remodeling. So I think being in an apartment and not having a to-do list as far as projects go, I've got to finish painting that wall and got to put that hardware on, just looking at all the things where you get started on a million different projects and then lose interest or get bored or get busy with other things. So it'll be nice to have things done and completed and
For
not
you.
my responsibility to take care of.
Yeah. So this business, you just like did it all on your own. You said one day I'm gonna try it, and like, yeah, I kind of like that.
Yeah, I like I said, got started in it. Just had a builder tell me, "Hey, this would be helpful," and I thought, okay, well, if I can add value in whatever way, and you're telling me this would be helpful for you, I'm sure it would be helpful for other builders as well. So, kind of just started up my own version of how I do things. I'm a little atypical when it comes to how people normally go about doing things like this in the industry, and I focus more on the B2B kind of relationship. So I have my deliverables set up in a way that's better structured for the business, where I have, the visual things of what I put together that are client facing so they can see what the selections look like, what everything looks like together, make sure we get their approvals on everything. But I'm also putting together more of like a building guide so that can be distributed to the different trades and people on site as well to really bring the vision to life. So I'll have super detailed installation instructions and dimensions for everything and mock-ups on that end, as well as a very comprehensive spreadsheet with all the specs and details and everything. So it's interesting. I was a business major in college, so I kind of approached the design business from the business POV as well, of really implementing systems and making things super organized, because there are so many different things that go into building a house. It's not just here's the paint color, here's the tile, here's the countertops. There's like a million decisions that go into each room, especially things like kitchens and bathrooms, where you've got all the appliances and the specs for all of those things and lots of details to consider. So I try to make it as organized and streamlined as possible. So I have a weird combination of like type A brain and type B brain. So I try to marry the two together and put it together in a way that makes sense for the builder and for the client as well.
Yeah, it's like the one part of my business that I don't struggle with. I just don't do it because I'm not good at it. I'll walk into a place and I'll know when it's done right versus when
Yeah.
it's not done right. But like if somebody asks me how I should do this or how I should stage, I kind of just find a staging company and like,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I feel like that's great. When you know you're not an expert in something, then I think it's good to stay in your lane and let people be experts in the things that they're experts in. That's
Yeah.
kind of personal philosophy as well, of I'll pick out the finishes for things, but then when it comes to actual installation or the construction, then of course I'm leaving that in the experts' hands of I don't know how to build it, so you tell me what you need to make it happen and we'll source those things. So yeah, I think it's interesting. Some people just don't have like color brain in general, where you're able to see different shades of different colors, and it's super funny. My husband, I'll show him things that I'm working on and get his opinion on, well, what do you think about this? And he's like, yeah, those two options look like the exact same color to me, but do whatever you think looks best. I'm like, okay, perfect.
That's what would happen to me. Like I don't notice a difference. Yeah.
Exactly. He's like, are you showing me two different options or is this a trick? But yeah. It's funny to me. I'm like, oh, they're so different. But I think that's kind of difference between men and women in general. And, some people have for it and some people just don't.
Yep. Where did he play professional baseball?
He was with the Colorado Rockies organization for 7 years, and then was with the Astros organization this past year, and then recently transitioned into the golf world. So he's working at Cordillera Ranch out in Boerne as their assistant superintendent.
Okay. So were you in Colorado with him, or this
No, we met during COVID
Okay.
on a dating app, actually. So he happened to be coming back to Houston because when COVID first happened, they're like, we don't know what this is. We'll just send everybody home temporarily from spring training. So then we happened to meet when he was back in town for that. So we did long distance for part of the year. You know, of course, during baseball season every year, like while we dated, then while we were engaged, we planned a wedding long distance and then got married in the off season. And then he went back for season after that once we were married. So we've done the back and forth thing a lot. So now that he's working out in Bernie, we still have our house here in Houston. I'm technically living here while we get things prepped to put it on the market, and then I'll be moving out there. But we've done quite a bit of long distance over the years.
Yeah. So you actually left your house during COVID in Houston? People?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we were a little bit more
Wait,
relaxed.
were you doing real estate then at that point?
I was, yeah.
What were like the rules? Were you allowed to do it
Yeah,
there?
yeah, it was, when things first broke out, I think for like a couple weeks, there were restrictions on running open houses and just making sure that you're being respectful when you're doing showings and keeping a mask on. But once the initial things
Hmm.
happened, people were much more relaxed about it. And then everybody got back to work and bills to pay. So, things to do, places to go. So I think once the initial shock kind of wore off on it, then here especially, things were much more relaxed than they were in other parts of the country.
Yeah, like here, I think we were like technically not allowed to do showings, or there were like some rules, or like at one point you weren't allowed to do showings. Everything had to be virtual. You could go, but the client couldn't come, and like there was all this
I mean,
paperwork. But there were like like most agents still did it, like just. But then there were others that like would flip out at you if you were like, and it was awkward. Yeah,
well, how do you recreate being able to see a home in person?
yeah,
There's
you have to see.
pictures, but pictures can be so misleading. Videos too, if you can't see the scale of the space, especially if you do like the zoom out with the fisheye lens or whatever, where
Hmm.
you're like, I have no idea how large this room is. I don't know what I'm signing up for. I don't think I'd be comfortable buying a house over Zoom. I know a lot of people did that though.
They did, yeah. So when you do your work, do you have a professional photographer that captures it, or do you do it, or?
Yeah, I do some of it myself. Most of like the
Yeah.
social media content and things like that, I have a fancy little Nikon camera that I'll take out there and do my own photos. And then for actual finished photos of the projects, a lot of the builders that I work with will hire professional photographers or real estate photographers as well. Just kind of depends on if it's a custom build or if we're doing it for a spec, because then obviously we need all the high quality listing photos and it's kind of a different style of photography. But on some of our custom projects, we hire more of an editorial. She's actually a portrait photographer, but she does more high end editorial style photos so that hopefully we can maybe one day get in something like Architectural Digest or
That
one
would
of
be
the
good. Yeah.
magazines. They're trying to build up a good portfolio of those things. Also, a little business idea for myself, just talking about future plans and goals. I'd love to put together my own coffee table book one day that has like photos of the different projects that I worked on and just tips and tricks of things around the home, like hosting, a little Martha Stewart inspired number. So I'm trying to build up a good chunk of content that I can put into a book one day, but I'm sure that will take me quite a bit of time to build up enough to put it all into one sizable coffee table book. I don't want to have it where it's, flat. That'd be unfortunate. So
Yeah.
waiting that up, but wanting to get some high quality photos for that as well.
I forget what I was just going to ask you about. Shoot. It was something with the Nikon camera. So is it like one of those little ones, or is it like a
No, it's a regular
DS?
photography size camera. I know nothing about photography
Yeah.
though. I have a couple different lenses and one of them does more zoomed in stuff and the other one doesn't. That's about where my knowledge goes as far as I set it up, make sure that I have it on all the settings and then use apps on my phone to make it all gorgeous once I get it on there. But for the
Yeah.
rest of it, I have no idea. I have these little reflector things that I got as a Christmas gift from
Hmm.
my family that I'll try to set those up to get the lighting right and, just try to do a couple things to make it perfect. But I'm just making it up as I go, to be honest.
Yeah. So the reason I even brought it up, so those little digital cameras that were like popular years ago are like
Mhm.
back now, and like
Yeah.
so like if you go on TikTok, they're the greatest things in the world. Everybody thinks they're so much better.
Oh
So my
yeah.
daughter recently she went abroad to Australia and she wanted
Ooh,
one of those cameras. So they're hard to find, the ones that some of
yes.
them some because basically the ones that are older are the ones that people really want. So like they're hard to
Mhm.
find. So we went into a store and there was one that wasn't a Nikon. It was like some Sony and it was really expensive. And then she was like, I don't want that. I want the Nikon one that's old that everybody wants. So they didn't
Mhm.
have it. So I just asked the guy, I'm like, are these cameras like better than like what your iPhone will take? And the guy's like, no, they're ridiculous. They're just for TikTok. And like, I don't know why everyone says they're so good. They're not. But
Yeah,
she
that's
was trying to
hilarious.
convince me that the way it looks is like older and different than like what the iPhone looks like. And that's like,
It looks
yeah.
more vintage because it's lower quality. That's
Yeah, but
hilarious.
it's really just lower quality and like
Yeah.
but I always thought like from if I would have just listened to TikTok, it's just such a better camera than your iPhone or like
Oh
it's
yeah, no,
not
I've seen it, and people are hunting them down on eBay and getting into bidding wars over them, like the Canon.
Nikon cool pics. That's the big one.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and there's a popular new Canon one that's like the
Yeah, there's a
G7S or
kind of one. Yep.
like the influencer camera that everybody's using. But no, I have just a regular camera that I think I got at Best Buy, just something
Yeah.
easy that does the job, does the trick.
So I don't know, that's like kind of all I had. I wanted to learn more about like your business and like what you do that I can't do and like what a lot of realtors just can't do and like it's always nice to meet someone who like visualizes how to make things like you do. But if do you have any questions for me or anything you want to know or if not, do you want to just tell everybody how they could get a hold of you if they ever want to design their
Yeah.
house? Yeah.
My website is madhausco.com. It's Madhaus, doing something a little special, a little interesting with that. So madhausco.com, or you can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Madelyn Kilkenny. Yeah, I think that's all I have to plug.
Yeah, that's great. I will I followed you on Instagram. I'll follow you on TikTok also and
Perfect.
see all the bad comments that you get. But
I purge them. I delete them.
oh,
I'm
really?
shameless.
See,
I'm like, "Ooh, you like it?" Nope.
I was always told to leave the bad comments and like respond to them. And like you could even like chat GPT how to respond to them and it like actually helps with the engagement.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
But
Yeah,
some
that's
I've deleted some too. Some of them are just so bad that I kind of feel like I have to. Yeah.
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 Don't want to give them the win.
Yeah. My most successful TikTok video actually was it was like a home tour with a like she was kind of a client, but we ended up like just looking at a house that she was never gonna buy that was just like really nice.
Mhm.
And it was like we like she was talking through it and like the house was nice, but like it went viral basically because that particular day she was on some kind of medicine that made her skin break out and like people were just
No.
torturing her. And like I first I was deleting them, and then she was just like, "You don't have to delete them," and like it just kept going and going, and like that's all people. And it wasn't that bad, but
That's so funny. Yeah, I
yeah,
feel like, especially with trying to make house content and things like that, it's interesting. You hope that it reaches the right audience where people are like, oh, this is the coolest house ever. I'd want to
right,
live there. You always get like the
the
random thing, a
total different thing.
weird thing in the corner or whatever. There's always something that winds
Yeah,
up being the thing that people catch on to.
exactly. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Hope to maybe work with you someday.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
All
Thank you
right,
so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
no problem. Have a good day. See ya.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.